Yeah, it is true. And I suppose one bit, and we've really got to face into this because I know people in the chat panel saying, well, it's not all positive. And there are things that I did want to ask you about today that Arne Slot, who, brilliant minds, we've talked before, brilliant subs and all this. There is a charge you can level against him a little bit, is that there seems a real uncertainty. What I mean by that last season is you and me knew what the midfield three would be. We knew who the back four would be. We knew the style of play and what would happen, the patterns of play, how it would work. Arne Slot does seem to be changing it a lot. As in Gravenberch and Szoboszlai find themselves in the back four a lot. The midfield double pivot. The system changes a little bit. And even in this one, he kind of went back a little bit to last season with the midfield three. So if you're changing the players in the back line, the midfield, if you're changing the system, you're not going to build the patterns of play, the repetition and the relationships you need early door. We have got to sort of look at that and say, yeah, there's a fair element to that criticism, isn't there?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely. I think that's at the root of a lot of the problems, as you say. Really, is that I was told, I had a conversation with someone around this prior to the season that the manager was going to rotate more this season, which, by the way, everyone will remember was something he got hammered for not doing towards the back end of last season. So this is kind of what people wanted. But obviously the downside to that then is that, you don't build those relationships as quickly, and that, sometimes there's someone new involved in the build-up and therefore they're going to find it really difficult. So, the right back's not where you think he's going to be because it's Frimpong this time instead of Bradley, and he's maybe less comfortable than him, or the midfield is going to have Wirtz at the top of it rather than Szoboszlai, who does run in a certain way, and so the pressing structure changes. So you're right. I almost think he should, he could do with a run where he just names a kind of consistent starting 11, really, as much as rotation in the long term is for the better. At the start of the season, maybe it would have been better over the first kind of those first three sort of tranches of fixtures, making minimal changes really to just get things settled down, and then he could slowly drip feed players into it. Maybe that's kind of part of the reason for some of the chaos really and misunderstandings between the players, because and you can only kind of lay that at the door of the manager really. So I think if he's making any mistake, I think that's probably a fair one to criticise him for.
And I suppose as well, the Florian Wirtz situation, because he's played him mainly, we heard he wanted him as a 10. That's what he wanted to do. He was almost going to be a key cog in the system. But big game, Everton, dropped. Big game here at the weekend, dropped and comes on. And again, we've seen him off the left against Palace. Does that not scream a little bit of, am I using Wirtz regularly? Am I not? Is he my system? Is he not? There seems a bit of uncertainty there, to be fair.
Yeah, I think that's just kind of acknowledging that he hasn't hit the ground running at all, which again is something he hoped wouldn't happen, but you can't really kind of control. And it's difficult, isn't it? What do you do in this situation? Do you just keep him out the 11 completely, or do you try and play him till he just adapts to the Premier League? That process probably won't happen without games, but then nobody wants that process to be ongoing while Liverpool are having difficult results. So it's just a bit of a nightmare, really. I mean, how do you solve that problem? What would people prefer, really? If it's to just leave him out and let him train, then maybe the manager could do that. But I think he's probably only going to get there by playing in Premier League games. So again, it's just added something else for him to think about on top of kind of, like we say, bedding in these other players, having to try and rotate more so people are fresher by the end of the season, having an Isak who is just not at full fitness yet. Although the hope is now that he will be after this international break. So just been a few issues to kind of work through there. And I don't think he's clearly not making the best of it, because the best of it would be to just keep winning. But that's not happened over the course of the last week. So again, it's maybe something you can say that the manager's not got quite right, really.
Yeah. And got to say to the chat panel as well, because we are getting a wild range of comments. This is the point of analysis, people. There are some positive. It's not all negative, but we are being honest about where things could be better. And some of you are obviously showing things there.
One thing to say about that as well, guys, honestly, maybe it's just me and my job. I have to leave myself somewhere to go if this season goes completely south and Liverpool end up finishing 8th. If I'm calling them disgraceful now, I've got nowhere to go. And the fact is, if you are second in the league, there are positives there. Unfortunately for you guys, I know it's really hard to hear that, but like you've got to, like I say, you've got to leave yourself somewhere to go in terms of your levels of criticism. I've seen seasons where Liverpool have finished 8th in the Premier League and barely felt like they've won a game. So if I'm to sit here talking about the Premier League champions who sit second in the Premier League, I've probably got to give myself some leeway that if things get worse, then I can, bring out the big criticisms. I just don't think it's right at the moment that I could, go for the, absolutely hammering them, because it could go one of two ways, by the way. It can either go, they improve and the positives become more consistent and we see a lot of the upsides, or it becomes that they go, all these negatives that we're seeing in the games at the moment, they become more consistent and then the season really, really goes south. So, like I say, I've got to give myself some room there. So that's why I don't want to, or I don't think it's justified to completely hammer them with the position that they're in at the moment.
True. There's two big ones that I wanted to ask you, and some of these are being mentioned in the chat panel as well. Because obviously recruitment's always something. It's a big summer, as we know, and people have talked about. But the one thing that still strikes me at the moment is we talked about Kirkes before. Now, Kirkes was bought with a specific skill set. He's what I'd call a road runner. He bombs on. He's fast. He gets up and down. He did it so well at Bournemouth, and he gets the ball in the box. Similar one was with Frimpong. You thought, are we going to go flying fullbacks, for want of a better phrase? And yet the way they're being used at the moment, almost inverted at times or coming inside. When I look at that, and we talked about other fullbacks in the summer that they looked at, that, an Incapi and Ainore, who are better suited, it seems, if you're going to play that style. As much as people are hammering Kirkes, we're not really playing to his strengths or what he did so well at Bournemouth, are we?
No, I'd agree with that. And I think his relationship with Gakpo isn't great at the moment either, which I think is a big problem for Liverpool. And, you would have thought that would have been a real strength for Liverpool, in that, Gakpo seems like a perfectly complementary winger to Kirkes, the guy who comes inside, and the guy who races around the outside of him. So it's very, very difficult to defend about that. The problem is you're not going to get Kirkes racing down the outside of him if he's tucked in along his centre half in possession. I mean, I'd agree that I think that is a really strange one. I wonder whether part of it is kind of just like, let's just, before we let the leash off him at the moment, let's just try and be a bit more solid. Obviously, it's not quite working at the moment, is it? But whether that is maybe the thinking, and then, as the season progresses, they're going to see a bit more of him knowing exactly when to go and getting him into those dangerous positions. But I want to see more of that. It's almost like, the solidity's not there at the moment, so you might as well just go all out. And, Kirkes is such a threat down that left-hand side we saw for Bournemouth. So, let's see a little bit more of that. I think that, it's not suiting his strengths, and for all his weaknesses I talked about earlier about when he's receiving possession in certain positions, I don't think he's being given his strengths, being played to his strengths when he gets the other side of the ball up the pitch. So, I'd like to see him a bit better in that, and I think that the manager's got to give him, a bit more license really to do what he was so good at Bournemouth. Yeah,
the only one I'd really say in that I've seen him do it is Everton, where he did put a few crosses in. He looks dangerous, and he can actually, when he travels, he can progress it well. It is a different way of doing it, but that is his strength. So it just seem a bit bizarre. And I've got to mention this because it was in my mind, and the chat panel are saying as well. Ali PS there saying Chiesa not playing is what annoys me. I mean, I was happy that he was on the bench. I thought he's in form over Ungamoa. Like, you've seen what he can do. Gakpo, I know he scored, but again, he started to look tired. He was giving the ball away, and I thought, if we're going to chase a goal, this is made for Chiesa, but nothing again.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's particularly strange we're not seeing a lot of him on the basis that Gakpo's form has just not been great since the start of the season. I think the manager would maybe say, well, how often have I used him down the left-hand side? And that would maybe be fair. We've seen a lot of him in centre-forward position early doors, and then sometimes on the right as well. Not an awful lot of him down the left, so maybe he just doesn't like him there for whatever reason, but it's just clear with the way that Gakpo's playing, the way that Chiesa's looked full of beans whenever he's come on and looked like a goal threat, that, that would have been a smart sub, really. And, Chiesa, just to get him on the pitch instead of Endo, might have been a smart sub as well, to give Chelsea more to think about the other way, rather than what happened, which was kind of Endo coming on looking like the ball was a bomb or whatever. So yeah, I just think this slot. You've always got to think like kind of. I think this about players though. He's always trying to do the thing that will win him games. So, he didn't hold anything against Chiesa early in the season when he was bringing him on to win games against Bournemouth and Newcastle. So it's not kind of, they've got some personal beef. And I know people kind of want to say that sometimes. He's just obviously doesn't believe that he will offer enough in those situations. And his decisions, by the way, are informed not just by what goes on in kind of in the matches, the bits we see, but also training every single day. So he's making decisions based on that. So he must have some justification for it. But people are always going to say, well, it's not enough justification because when the results aren't right, and they aren't right at the moment. So, it's just... I would have liked to have seen him late in that game without question, really. And I wonder whether the manager regrets not using him, to be honest.
Yeah, again, maybe shoulda, woulda, couldas, but you would have loved to have seen him in this one. And I suppose the final question, it's never this simple, I know, as I'm asking you. He will have a million things in his inbox right now on a slot. What do you think is going to be his sort of real focus? Because people talk about the shape, the system, the progression of the ball, getting players in form. What do you think is really going to be dominating his mind, Nottingham Forest style almost?
I think it's probably evenly split between what they look like out of possession versus that build-up. It's the two biggest issues that they've had all season is that basically can be too easy to play through at times and not all the time, by the way. I mean, again, I go back to some of the results they've had. I thought against Arsenal, they looked pretty perfectly defensively against Burnley. And I thought they were, and I know they conceded twice, but I thought they were very good defensively against Atletico Madrid as well. And bar those two very unfortunate deflections, would have come away with a clean sheet. They need to get back there. They need to find that again. It's not being so easy to play through, and whether that's, there are all those kind of combination of reasons for why that is, but he needs to get back there. And then, the build-up, getting the ball consistently to your forwards. Neither of these things were issues. I mean, I've seen so many suggestions that they were absolutely, dreadful last season, even towards the back end or whatever. But it's like, they had the best underlying numbers in the Premier League by an absolute million miles. I mean, underlying numbers defensively were second best to Arsenal, but marginal. And then they generated around 20 XG more than Arsenal did. So that's a really good football team because they were surrendering absolutely nothing on the attacking end to be basically very similar in terms of solidity to Arsenal. So, he can put together a balanced team, and I think that's it. It's finding that balance, and that's something he's struggling with at the moment. So I think that's the overall. I mean, it's almost a cop-out to say it's kind of everything, isn't it? But it is. It's that build-up and ability to get the ball to the forwards versus that ability to be solid out of possession. And you just have to find that balance as quickly as possible, and that's difficult with all these new players. But it's the job of the manager, and if you do all that turnover in one summer, you've got to kind of get there as soon as possible, and that will be the aim.
Yeah, and it probably all be together, like you say, if you can start progressing the ball better, well, you can control the ball, you can create chances for your forwards, and the opposition having less ball, less counted on, it all kind of links in together. And I get what people have said about personnel, maybe missing Diaz and things like this. But
just quickly, how much stick did Diaz get last season, by the way?
Yeah.
How much stick did Diaz get last season? And now it's like he was actually the key that unlocks it all. I mean, I don't believe that for a second. Now, you can see, I think Diaz was fantastic for Liverpool last season. We praised him multiple times for what he did for that team, being versatile, work rate, goals, output, all that. But he got hammered for not giving enough output. And now he's gone to Bayern, and obviously the output's gone up because that league's weaker. Look at what Wirtz is struggling to make that transition. It's so much easier to go the other way. But it's interesting, isn't it, how things shift? Because we saw Diaz was getting hammered consistently, I thought, last season on social media. And now he'd be the saviour. It's fascinating how things change.
Yeah, it's just almost that I like the sale, I thought, in the terms of the money, for the length of contract, age and all that. I think we missed a trick, maybe not getting a type of player, that can just carry it with pace or just be an outlet when you're really struggling. We do lack that so much down the left. But not reinventing history. And I suppose, but we talked about personnel. If Canate, McAllister, and Mo Salah just start playing okay, that would be a massive help in terms of moving the needle, because those three they're the spine of the team. I know people will say VVD, but they play down the spine essentially in all areas. That would just help so much, wouldn't it?
Yeah, this is it. I mean, so for all those kind of structural issues that we're talking about, and that it's just not kind of the trade-offs aren't falling in Liverpool's favour, and they need to do something about the build-up and getting it right. There's just a few players who aren't in form, and what you can say. I'd say if a few players aren't in form, you've got to blame the system a lot of the time. But with McAllister, he's clearly just feeling it from that injury, isn't he? That 100%, he is just directly, individually, not in good form. Canate, I just think some of his problems, most of his problems, I think a lot of systemic issues are maybe coming at his door. Again, these build-up problems that he didn't seem to have last season, it's maybe not his fault, but equally, he's looked to be shaky in some of his defensive 1v1 moments as well. And Salah, he had a game like Chelsea where he did touch the ball enough and didn't do enough with it, and that for me is, you can't blame the system for that. So it's poor form, isn't it? Like you say, if those three come back and they're in better shape and ready to play, and that would help Liverpool immensely. And yes, the manager's got problems of his own to solve, and hopefully, again, he's got a couple of weeks to kind of think about those and try and solve those issues. So hopefully he can. But some of the players can just tick the form over a little bit and start to play better. You've got the ingredients then for everything to kind of turn a corner.
Fingers crossed, indeed. And there we go, ladies and gents. We arrive at the end of a show, which was a bit different because the chat panel was absolutely wild at times, but I do appreciate all your thoughts and views. With balance, we try and analyse it. We tried to look at the positives because there are still some. There is a lot of work for Arne Slot to do with some questions that he needs to fix and answer very, very quickly. All that leaves me to say as ever is David for the time, the analysis and the insight. And actually, I probably enjoyed this one a bit more rather than sharing screen and looking at visuals. It was good just to chat it through, this one, I think.
Yeah, it was good not to have to hear my voice twice, to be honest. But yeah, I like it. It's mad, isn't it? After defeats, these ones are kind of sometimes the best ones to do because, there are things to talk about that aren't just that, everyone's brilliant and everything's great. It's nice to have stuff to analyse. It's not always positive, but of course we absolutely want it to turn the corner in the United game coming up, and we've got 2 weeks to stew on this now.
Yeah, I'm not missing so much though as well. I'd like to go back to those. We'll win it again. It's funny, last minute. That would be more enjoyable. So something like that in the near future would be good. But we tried to cover it all for you, ladies and gents. So on Monday, the 6th of October, that was a Media Matters for Anfield Index.